And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very beautiful 14th day of February 22. 14th of February, doesn't that remind a bell? Yes, it is the Valentine's Day, and if you have forgotten something, you still have a little bit of time. Wishing everyone who celebrates and observes Valentine's Day a very, very happy Valentine's Day. Hope something special happens to you today. Well, moving on, let's take a look at why and how it's being celebrated right here in Brisbane. Later on, we will take a look at the legend of Valentine.
Cupid's arrow pierced many hearts in Brisbane, and all over town people were falling under its seductive spell.
It's sharing love, being happy.
Very important, and that shows that people really care.
It's also a warming day for growers and sellers of roses. This year's sales are well in excess of $1 million. Queensland romantics paid up to $70 a dozen. In New South Wales, it was closer to $120 a dozen.
It's an important day, especially for the women.
Wedding trip tonight. I'm getting dinner and everything made for me. Last.
I don't know yet. I'd like it home.
The food of lovers, chocolate, also fared well in the gift-giving stakes. Classified ads proved another popular expression of the heart. One daily newspaper boasted sales of more than $5,000 in love lines.
Saab, let's rev up our engines together sometime down the track. BMW Cabriolet.
Baby bear, I'm hot for your porridge. See you at 4. Love, Goldilocks.
Waggy bum. Where you been today? You want to be my little sweetie? Fancy bum.
Mr. Lovesexy, tonight, my place, 7:30. Bring the vino. Amazonian love goddess.
And any guess on what year that was? Yes, it was Brisbane, but that was 1990. Good old days, wonderful, wonderful memory there. Well, the early history of Valentine's Day. So Valentine's Day is named after Saint Valentini, a Catholic priest who lived in Rome in the 3rd century. There are many stories about Saint Valentini, and over these stories grew the legend that we know today. So in very brief notes, at the time of Valentine's life, many Romans were converting to Christianity, but the Emperor Claudius II was a pagan and created strict laws about what Christians were allowed to do. Claudius believed that Roman soldiers should be completely devoted to Rome, and therefore passed a law preventing them from marrying. The idea was that if they got married, they would have attachment, and rather than being the brave warrior that they were supposed to be out there, they would be thinking about their wife and the lovers and their partners. So that's why what he did, he banned marrying. So Saint Valentine, and he prevented them from marrying. So what happened? Saint Valentine then started conducting marriage ceremonies in secret. So, he began to marry of those soldiers in secret Christian ceremonies, and this was the beginning of the reputation for believing in the importance of love. He said, King Claudius, the Emperor Claudius wants everyone to go out fight, and he's stopping people from marrying, but Saint Valentini, he started marrying off people secretly in ceremonies. Eventually, Valentini was found out and jailed for his crimes against Claudius. Now, this is where the interesting part begins. While imprisoned, Valentini cared for his fellow prisoners, and also his jailer's blind daughter. Now, this is where the story comes from. The jailer who actually jailed him had a blind daughter. Legend has it that Valentini cured the girl's blindness, and in his final act, the day that he was taken out to be executed, the day which happened to be the 14th of February, year 270. So before going out and after having cured the girl's blindness. And the girl was very kind to him as well. She used to bring him, food and other items in the cell. So you know what? So there was love in the air. So just before being executed, because he had cured the girl's blindness, he wrote a note to her, and on the note he wrote, "From your Valentine." His name was Valentine. So Valentine was executed on 14th February in year 270. So there you are, a very, very short summary. There's more to the story, but yes, that's how it all started. So once again, wishing everyone who celebrates and who observes and who gets some special tokens today, very, very happy Valentine's Day. And as they reckon, and last night we had a wonderful, wonderful show right here on Australian Indian Radio, and it was on Valentine's Day, and it was very well presented by RJ Savi, and of course it was the performing artists were Mithun and Bondita. The chemistry between them and the presentation by Savi was just spectacular. Here's a glimpse of what happened last night.
सुरों की दीवानी, घर घर में बसी ये सुरों की दीवानी, पुरस्कारों से सजी गलियां उनकी। अलविदा अलविदा कहते गई ये स्वर सम्राग्नि, अलविदा अलविदा कहते गई ये स्वर सम्राग्नि, गीतों के जरिए बस अब रह गई याद उनकी, बस अब याद उनकी। संगीत वो एक भाव है जिसे हम व्यक्त करना चाहते हैं, और ऐसा भाव होता है कि जिसे हम ना तो चुप होके सह सकते हैं, पर कहना भी जरूरी होता है। संगीत एक वो माध्यम होता है जिसके जरिए हम ये भावों को अपने व्यक्त करते हैं, और लता जी ने इन सारे भावों को व्यक्त करने वाले ढेर सारे गानों का खजाना हमारे लिए छोड़ा है। उनका हम सबके बीच से जाना ये एक बहुत बड़ी दुखद घटना है, पर हर कलाकार चाहता है कि शो मस्ट गो ऑन। तो चलिए आज उनकी याद में, और आज कल वैलेंटाइंस डे स्पेशल डे है, इस सब को मद्देनजर रखते हुए आज का हमारा ये प्रोग्राम शुरू करते हैं उनकी ही आवाज का ये पहला गीत सुनकर।
And as I mentioned, a very, very beautiful song, very well presented and performed. So you can go on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel and watch that once again. So it is very well done, well presented on the occasion. But don't forget that the next program that we are planning is a tribute to Lataji. It will be in the form of a live concert. So stay tuned for that update. Well, right now, let's get on track with the latest news happening around here. So young Canberrans, how are they treated for mental health? Is the unit up to date?
As the name suggests, the adult mental health unit at the Canberra Hospital was designed to provide a therapeutic setting for adults requiring mental health care that can't be provided elsewhere. Consumer advocates who have inspected the facility to provide feedback to committees say, for that purpose, it's appropriate.
People get in crisis and they need to be medicated and managed and kept safe, and other people keep safe. So it's a good unit. I've got a lot of respect for the leadership on the facility.
However, a provision in the care unit's health model allows the admission of children as young as 12. And advocates like Paul say, when it comes to kids, it's certainly not the place they should be.
It's not ideal. I mean, the general cohort is from 20s upwards, and so it's not a question of what appropriate programs are there. I think it's a question of safety.
There will always be unusual cases, and we will always need the flexibility within our mental health services to be able to meet individual needs.
With that in mind, a new adolescent mental health unit and day service was scheduled to open in late 2021. But Canberra Health Services says after consultation, it was decided to co-locate that unit with other adolescent services at the Centenary Hospital for Women and Children, and it won't be completed for another 16 months.
There has been increased pressure on our hospitals and increased pressure on space within our hospitals to make sure that we can care for people safely, even if they are COVID positive. But we are on track to deliver by June 2023.
Some workers at the adult mental health unit fear, in the meantime, children are falling through the cracks, with a 13-year-old admitted to the unit last week. The health worker who spoke to the ABC on condition of anonymity told us when they found out an adolescent that age had been admitted, they were in disbelief, and they had serious concerns that staff don't have appropriate paediatric training or equipment to deal with a child, particularly in the event of an emergency. With the government having allocated funding as far back as 2008 to design an adolescent and young adult mental health unit, the opposition argues a dedicated facility should have been completed long ago.
It's completely distressing to hear that our children are being admitted to the adult mental health unit. That's distressing. We all know that the adult mental health unit is no place for a child.
Mental health educators say the location isn't as important as the services provided.
Will they have access to a paediatric psychiatrist? Will they have access to paediatric mental health nurses?
Canberra Health Services insist those services are on hand and young people are moved to a paediatric ward or discharged as soon as it's safe and appropriate. Where they'll go if they need further acute treatment for now, though, isn't certain. Harry Frost, ABC.
Well, of course, children's one should be the children's one, but as they mentioned there, that is the location more important or is the treatment more important? So, there's always two sides of the coin there as well. Well, Western Australia is hit by a swarm of earthquakes. What's happening there?
Crumbled buildings, destructive tsunamis, and devastated communities. The impact of earthquakes can be enormous, so much so that they can reshape the Earth's surface with their force.
This giant rock's just fallen on the RSA building.
For most of us, earthquakes are most closely associated with places such as Japan, New Zealand or California. But the ground beneath Australia's feet is not as geologically stable as many think.
Is it an earthquake or a structural thing?
I don't know, but... I don't know.
Let's go.
On average, Australia has 700 reported earthquakes a year. Already in 2022, hundreds of people were rattled by a 4.7 magnitude earthquake in WA's Great Southern. It occurred near Wagen and was the biggest of a swarm of 40 earthquakes in that region in the space of 3 weeks. something that happens quite frequently in the area. So why does Australia, which is not on a plate line, get earthquakes, and why are some regions more prone to them? The Australian tectonic plate boundary runs around the Indonesian archipelago, through the southwest Pacific and New Zealand, and ends midway between New Zealand and Antarctica. And like all plates, it's constantly moving, colliding into the Pacific plate to Australia's north and east, and the Eurasian plate to the northwest. The collision between moving plates generates stress deep inside the Earth's crust, and you'll see most of the big earthquakes on the plate boundaries. But that pressure also creates what's known as intraplate fault lines. You can think of it like a pavlova. If you put pressure on its edges, that's where the biggest cracks will be. But you'll also see cracks starting to form on the inside of the pav too. Earthquakes occur all around Australia, but some regions are more prone to it than others. WA gets some of the biggest and the most, like Meckering in WA's wheatbelt, which was destroyed by a 6.5 magnitude earthquake in 1968. This is partly because of the sheer land mass in comparison to other states. But Geoscience Australia seismologist Hugh Glanville says it also has a few other factors working against it. One reason is some of the rock is older and more brittle, so it's easier to crack. Another is the direction of some of the fault lines in WA compared to the direction the pressure is coming from, which happens to make it easier for the fault lines to move. And WA also gets something known as earthquake swarms, far more frequently than any other state.
Just been hit by another earthquake again.
While a usual earthquake pattern involves a main shock and a series of aftershocks, an earthquake swarm involves tens or even hundreds of moderate main shocks, each with their own aftershock. Other active areas include the Adelaide Hills, the Great Dividing Range between Melbourne, Canberra and Newcastle, and Tennant Creek in the Territory, where Australia's largest onshore earthquake was recorded. The good news is most of Australia's earthquakes are magnitude 2 and 3 earthquakes, which will cause light shaking but no damage. It's not until magnitude 4.5 that you start to see minor damage like dishes and windows breaking and plaster cracking, and magnitudes 5 and 6 that you'll start to see damage to houses and buildings. Earthquakes above magnitude 5 occur every 1 to 2 years, and above magnitude 6 about once a decade. And for the record, earthquakes aren't just on Earth. It turns out moonquakes occur too.
Now that's something to consider, the moonquakes. Well, never heard of that. That's a lot of earthquakes happening out there in Western Australia. Well, another area where there is a little bit of a shaking and there might be some seismic activity is in and around our Prime Minister. Well, right now, Jenny Morrison speaks out against Grace Tame's reaction to her husband's disappointing things. So let's take a look at that report.
I just found it a little bit disappointing because we'll welcome you in our home. I respect people that, want to change things, stand up for their beliefs and are strong, but I still think there's manners and respect. I want my daughters to grow up to be fierce, strong, independent, amazing people. And I think they can still do that and show kindness to other people and be polite and have manners.
Having manners, that is such an important thing. Well, right now we'll try and see if we can connect with a live stream with our Premier. We are ready. Hello.
50 new cases, including 2,426 positive rats. Tragically, there have been 6 people who've lost their lives overnight, and once again, on behalf of Queensland families, I pass on my condolences to loved ones during this time. I'm advised 3 were in aged care. In terms of our numbers in our public hospitals, the Chief Health Officer will give a little bit more about that, but there's 484 in our public hospitals and 30 in private, 41 in ICU, 20 ventilated. Vaccine coverage, not much movement there, 92.36% at least one dose and 90.31% double dose. Boosters, 61.59%. 5 to 11-year-olds, 41.12% of eligible children. Once again, parents, please have a serious think about getting your children vaccinated if you haven't. That would be great. And the rats just keep on coming in, so that's good that they're coming in now and going out to the centres that need them the most. So I'll hand over to the Chief Health Officer and then the Health Minister, and then we'll move on to our next announcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Premier. So sadly we have 6 deaths to report today. One person in their 50s, one in their 60s, one in their 80s and 2 in their 90s. Of these 6 individuals, 1 was not vaccinated, 1 had received 1 dose of vaccine, 4 had received 2 doses of vaccine and none had received the booster dose. Also of this group, 3 were known to be residents of aged care facilities. That brings to a total of 200 the number of deaths in aged care facilities where we've reported in Queensland. And our thoughts are with the families today. In terms of hospitalisations, I think I've mentioned many times that Mondays, Tuesdays, because of the weekly fluctuation in discharge, we tend to see a flattening of cases. So we have 484 people in public hospitals today, which is slightly up from yesterday, 462, but that's just part of that weekly variation. We tend to see that we tend to see the numbers start to fall from about Wednesday during the course of the week. There are 40 people in intensive care units, public intensive care units in Queensland, 20 of whom are ventilated, and we also know that the numbers of people in intensive care tend to come down more slowly than the number in hospitals in general. In our private hospitals we have 30 patients with COVID, including 1 in ICU, and there were 34 yesterday. So far we have not seen any increase in cases in school-aged children. There were 963 cases reported in the past 24 hours, 527 in the 5 to 11 age group and 436 in the 12 to 17 year age group. It's only been just on a week since children have gone back to school, so what will happen this week will certainly be very interesting. We're watching that very closely. And again, I'll repeat that we had very significant numbers of cases in children 3 weeks ago which have been coming down, so the degree of immunity in school-aged children is still not clear. So exactly what is going to happen over the next week or two among children in school isn't clear, but we'll learn in the next few days whether numbers do or do not increase. I'll hand over to the Minister. Thank you.
Well, it's great to see the numbers continuing to come down and the pressure continuing to come off our hospital system. As the Chief Health Officer said, we always see slightly higher numbers as far as hospital beds on a Monday morning, but it's good to see that our ICU numbers have come down again from 44 yesterday to 40 today. And we've seen a slight decline in private beds as well, down from 34 to 30. So that's really good. It continues to show a bit of a trend there, and even our modelling is showing we're still seeing a decline in the number of positive cases across children as well. So we're not, after 1 week of school, I know it's still early, cross fingers, but we're not seeing a big surge at this stage as far as school going back. And the number of staff that we have quarantining and isolating has gone down as well. We now have 1,745 staff across Queensland Ambulance Service and our hospital and health services that are isolating and quarantining, down from 1,817 yesterday. So that's all great news, but I do want to continue to encourage people to come forward and get tested, whether it's a rapid antigen test or a PCR test if they do have symptoms. Also, of course, registering on the Queensland COVID website if you do get a positive rapid antigen test at home, and of course coming out and getting vaccinated. And it's good to see those numbers continuing to go up. In fact, our 12-year-old and above for our population here in Queensland is almost at 90% double dose as well, which is great news, but I would like to see The number of children, both 5 to 11 and 12 to 15-year-old, I'd like to see those percentages come up. And thank you to people who continue to come out and get their booster, because we're over 61% now, but we'd like to see that at 100% rate. If you are due for your booster, please come forward. GP, community pharmacy, or one of our state-run vaccination clinics. You can walk in or book to get those vaccinations.
Any questions for the Chief Health Officer or the Health Minister on COVID? Yep. Yep.
How long will these daily briefings be taking place? Are you going to scale back given that the numbers are coming down and we're seeing?
Thanks, Josh. Well, I smile because we had that conversation this morning. I think we are getting closer to be able to simply put the numbers up and report them at a consistent time every day, unless there is something out of the ordinary or particularly important that we believe needs to be reported at press conferences. Not quite there yet, but I think we're very close if we continue to see this trend happening for the next few days. So, but again, if the public really wants it, then we'll continue to report, but I think we are getting closer. I know many other jurisdictions have stopped doing their daily reporting at press conferences on this. Look, that's really a decision for the clinicians, for the chief health officers at AHPPC. I know there's discussions ongoing on this. I know internationally some of it's down to 5 days now, so we'll take the advice of the health officers on that one.
We think that there are some people who have held out for an alternative vaccine. As you know, I don't think it was necessary, but there are some people who wanted a more conventional protein-based vaccine, and so I think our numbers will increase somewhat. In terms of the long-term plan, it's not really going to influence our long-term plan. I think we're moving steadily forward now that this wave is coming to an end, and we'll be reviewing all of our plans in the next couple of weeks.
Can we go to the next now? Oh, COVID, okay, sorry Lydia. Yeah. Well, I'm confident within my office they have been. We can find out for you, but you can't enter Parliament unless you're vaccinated. That's the ruling from the Speaker. No, not to my knowledge. No. Okay. All right, thanks. Well, today we have another key announcement, and that's in relation to our satellite hospitals. At the last election, we said that we were going to build 7 satellite hospitals. This is to ease our pressure on our bigger hospitals and have them located closer to where people live. And this area here is the site of our 7th satellite hospital, which now means we have acquired all of the land. The detailed planning and design is definitely underway with the others, and we expect construction to be commencing on all of them by the end of this year. This is going to be really good for our families and patients, especially tell me they want to get their services closer to home, whether that's things like chemotherapy or renal dialysis. This is going to be great to be able to get your treatment closer to home. No more travelling into the big hospitals. This was a landmark election commitment, and one that my government is very keen to deliver as quickly and safely as possible. The 7 satellite hospital sites are in 8 Mile Plains, which is where we are standing today, and as you can see, a great parcel of land here, and I'm quite sure the families living around here are going to be extremely happy as well. Caboolture, Redlands, Pine Rivers, Tugun, Bribie Island and Ripley. So we absolutely hope that this will ease some of the pressure on our EDs. There will be 773 jobs created as a result of all of these satellite hospitals that will begin construction later this year. And this is fantastic news, especially for our employment and making sure that people have a job and be able to have a roof over their head and provide for their families. These are fundamental core values that we stand for as a Labor government. I know that the community is very excited about these satellite hospitals, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to look at rolling out more. but we'll have to evaluate that first. We're looking forward to getting them up and running as quickly and safely as possible to provide these services closer to home. I'll hand over to the Health Minister. Then we've got the Treasurer to say a few words. We've got the local members here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. And this is an exciting day that we have secured the last site in the 7 satellite hospitals. And in doing so means that we can start construction later this year and have these sites operational in 2023.
So that is good news of that site there, and hopefully, more hospitals are built that way. People don't have to travel far, as the Premier mentioned there as well. Well, while that is happening, while in the medical scene, let's look at medical groups and why they are not in favour of pharmacies, doing the diagnosis rather than the doctors.
They fill scripts and deliver vaccines, but soon chemists in North Queensland could be offering services that are normally performed by doctors.
The average person visits a pharmacy 18 times a year, so we are in a position to be accessible.
Under a state government pilot program, pharmacists will have the power to diagnose and treat 23 diseases, including asthma and type 2 diabetes. For the Australian Medical Association, it's a bitter pill to swallow.
We have deep concerns about patient safety. We also have concerns about the ability of someone to prescribe a medication, but also sell that medication.
This is not unique. Canada, New Zealand, the UK do this already.
The trial has been pitched as an antidote to chronic doctor shortages in regional areas.
I don't think pharmacists have the necessary training to diagnose, treat, or even prevent disease.
It's the same statements they said when about flu vaccines, and now we're providing coronavirus vaccines. They're making it a turf war, we're not.
Chemists taking part will receive extra training.
It's not something that you can learn on an online 120-hour tutorial.
But pharmacists insist they won't be taking the place of GPs.
If you've got high blood pressure, we'll be able to help you with the management of your high blood pressure. If you've got heart failure, then you still need to go and see your medical practitioner.
The state government says it's still finalising the scope of the trial. Jade Toomey, ABC News, Townsville.
Well, there you go. The pharmacists are providing a very essential service, but if you are out in a remote area and doctors are hard to come by, would you rather get some advice from the pharmacist or the chemist rather than having to wait for the doctor? That's something to decide. Well, right now let's go to New South Wales, where there have been some disappointing election by results, and the Premier sort of agrees on that.
The New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet says he's taking full responsibility for the outcome of yesterday's by-elections. He called the results disappointing, particularly in the seat of Bega, where there was a 13% swing against the Liberals. Now, Mr Perrottet said when he spent some time in that electorate recently, he did feel on the ground that people were still suffering and there were ongoing issues from the bushfires that were still unresolved.
Where the government could have done better in relation to the bushfire response, it's still a community that is in pain, that is still recovering from one of the most difficult bushfire summers we've ever had. I saw that firsthand. I met people firsthand who spoke to me about that, and clearly we could have done better.
The electorate of Bega was held by the former New South Wales Transport Minister Andrew Constance for 18 years. He had that seat with a margin of 6.9%. There's been a 13% swing towards Labor, which has resulted in their candidate Michael Holland being elected. So it's gone from being a safe Liberal seat to a similarly safe Labor seat. Here's what Michael Holland and the New South Wales opposition leader Chris Minns had to say about that today.
And it's a response that reflects local issues particularly. It reflects the local health services on the south coast of New South Wales. It reflects the bushfire response and the problems that local small businesses have been going through.
It's no good for hundreds of thousands of people to register an unhappiness with the direction of the government, and then for the senior levels, including the Premier of the New South Wales government, to simply say nothing's changed, we don't hear the message at all.
The electorate of Monero near the ACT will remain with the Nationals. Their candidate Nicole Overall will retain that seat, but they did see a 6.4% swing towards Labor there. In Sydney, the electorate of Strathfield will remain with the Labor Party, although their candidate Jason Yatsen-Lee will retain it with an even slimmer margin than his predecessor Jody McKay. Here in Willoughby, the Liberals will also retain this seat. This is, of course, the electorate of the former New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian. She held this seat with a significant margin of more than 20%, and we saw an independent Larissa Penn really bite significantly into that margin with a swing of 18% towards her. So we've heard some commentary from the New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet that he'll be looking at some of the issues here, particularly around the Beaches Link tunnel, which was one of the main things that Larissa Penn was campaigning on, and he said he'll be talking to the new MP Tim James about getting across those issues and seeing some more consultation with the communities here moving forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you in today's segment. As we know that today is the Valentine's Day, and happy Valentine's Day to all those who observe and enjoy and celebrate, and hope that something special is coming your way today. Well, right now it's time to say goodbye until tomorrow, and it's been wonderful. So please do go out and check out our weekend edition thing. So on Saturday we had a very good, fantastic interview here with Swami Swarup Anandaji from the global head of Chinmaya Mission. And of course, last night was the Music Junction Valentine's Day special one. So, check it out on our Facebook or on our YouTube channel. You will be pleasantly surprised. It's such a nice production and nice performances there, and beautiful presentation by RJ Savi. So until tomorrow, it's goodbye for me. Enjoy the day. This is mid of February, and wishing you all the very, very best for Valentine's Day.